If you want to know what the world looked like in 1923, walk through the door of that bank, and there it is in living color in 3 dimension.
I think most people know about the bank, but they don't know very much about the family.
Their history is almost like the Long Beach history in that they started it with the attitude of trust and friendship. C.J. Walker did, and he was one of the leaders in the community at that time.
Well, Long Beach in 1907 was a town that was really on the move. In 1902, the Pacific Electric Railroad came to town, and from that moment on, Long Beach just grew. If you walked down the street, you would have smelled the dirt and the horses, but you would have heard hammers and people working and smelled sawdust and just activity, all centered around growth.
A lot of people left places like Michigan, like Iowa, like Missouri to come to the West because there was new economic opportunity here. This is a time in American history when there's a lot of ups and downs economically.
After the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, a recession had set in. All of the growth and development that had been going on in Long Beach and throughout the rest of the United States suddenly came to an end.
In those years, banking wasn't like it is today. It was largely unregulated.
There virtually are no rules about banking. There are some state banking laws, there's one or two federal banking. There's basically no control. Anybody could come in, rent a building, and start a bank. If you had money in a bank that collapses, goodbye.
People from all over the country were rushing to banks, and banks were going bankrupt left and right. And you know how mass hysteria hits everybody.
The buzz goes through the neighborhoods, and you get this really bad feeling because it says you hear that the bank's in trouble. Now, if you've ever seen a run on the bank, it's a terrible thing to watch because people are really upset. They're hysterical almost.
Some of the movies that we've seen about bank panics in 1929 would have been similar to what we would have been seeing back then. But it was the small guys that had put their money in that were afraid that they might lose everything.
So when the First National Bank of Long Beach was under financial stress, CJ was made president.
He was a person that was very well recognized and honored in Long Beach because of his past achievements.
CJ had owned a small bank there on Pine Avenue called the People's Bank.
He had done so much for the community with all of the things that he'd founded, all of the activities that he was interested in.
And you have to realize what kind of man CJ Walker was. He was a blue-collar guy. He rode a horse to California. He related to people. He would have said, I got to do what's right. I'm going to have this money brought down, and I'm going to tell these people that they're not going to get cheated.
He managed to get all of the assets of the bank, and he found Los Angeles capitalists that were willing to take those assets and give him the wagon full of gold that he brought to Long Beach and showed all of the depositors.
So now they arrive at the bank. You can just picture the scene. These guys unloaded it. They probably had people there to help them. It was heavy. It was gold, Brought it in and opened the crates, set up the gold bars so people could see it.
He took the gold bars and actually built a pyramid so they could see that he had liquid assets.
I've heard a couple of stories. One, he stood up on the counter. It was a rounded counter, quieted the crowd and introduced himself as the new president of the bank. I'm C.J. Walker. I'm in charge, and I'm on your side. Now, that would have been profound to these working people. His faith was so strong in himself. He was imbued with it, and so was his wife. Carrie was right there shoulder to shoulder with him in all this. I think that the night before, she would have sat down and said, Charlie, we're going to have to do what's right. You're going to have to do what's right, and I'm here with you to back you up. They would sit there and balance the books and figure it out, because you knew if he blew it, it was done.
The Carrie was the key to CJ's success. She was a woman that knew how to take charge, knew how to accomplish goals.
They met in Tulare County when grandmother was teaching school up there.
There was a lady in the town that was kind of a matchmaker, and invited CJ over for Thanksgiving dinner. And there he met a school teacher, and her name was Carrie Ziegler. And he thought that she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen.
I think it was probably love at first sight, because that was it.
I mean, this guy felt like a brick in a barrel. It just wasn't going to be anything else, you know. So they started to see each other and started to date.
She says, "You're a very nice man. I'm going back to my family in Long Beach. You're welcome to join me."
Her family lived down in Long Beach.
And he says, "Wow, I'm sitting up in Tulare County with a bunch of minors. It's hard to find a woman like this. She's hard to get. She's independent. She's not writing mom and dad and saying, 'I've met this wonderful man and I'm staying in Tulare.' She goes, 'No, I'm going home where my family is. If you want to come and visit me, you're more than welcome.'"
Carrie and her mother would drive their horse and buggy down to the post office at Pine and Ocean, what's now Pine and Ocean, every day, pick up a letter from Charlie. One day they went down and there was no letter from Charlie. And they were very kind of chagrined, you know, and they turned around and were coming back up. They came back up to what is now 3rd and Pine, and there was C.J. Walker walking across the street. He had one thing and one thing only in mind. I mean, he said years later, "I didn't come to Long Beach for the climate. I came to Long Beach because Carrie was here." He came to Long Beach because he was in love.
He asked Carrie for her hand in marriage, and in 1895, they were married.
Carrie Walker was a pioneer in her time. She was passionate, she was motivated, she was humble, and she had this innate drive within her to help those in need.
I think what speaks to her charitable instincts the strongest was founding the YWCA. There was a girl, a young lady, on the steps of the city auditorium one night crying with nowhere to go, hungry, no home. Well, that's bad enough. But Carrie took it upon herself to say, "We're never going to have that happen again in our town."
Carrie took her home that night, put her at the table, fed her. Then she realized this is something we need to take care of on a larger scale.
And she sat in her living room with a group of like-minded women, and they collected $4 and undoubtedly went to Charlie and said, "We got to build a YWCA."
And they had quite a slew of women who boarded there because of it being women and being free of men, and they were safe there.
Between 1900 and 1910, Long Beach was the fastest growing city in the United States. We went from 2,200 people to 17,000 people in about 10 years. So the things that happened very quickly are, number one, Long Beach develops a harbor. Second thing that happens is the Panama Canal opens. And the third thing is World War I. These things all contribute to the development of Long Beach as a commercial center. In 1921, Signal Hill, which is right there in the middle of Long Beach, erupts with the largest single explosion of oil in the western United States. And Signal Hill becomes a major producer of oil for about the next 40 years. That oil revenue in the 1920s will allow Long Beach to pave its streets, to annex new neighborhoods, to double, quadruple its size, and that growth, as I say, just continues.
Gus Walker had the great privilege of being the third child of 3. He came into the banking business with his father.
So we're talking, I guess, 1922. CJ did a really smart thing.
CJ looks at his life and he says, "Well, when I was 16, I rode across the country. I got a job. And here you are, Gus. We're building a building. I would like you to oversee the construction of it."
He was very self-effacing, he was very quiet, he was very humble, and he was really smart.
It doesn't surprise me that CJ trusted Gus. He had an amazing personality. He was very good at communicating with people. He was a really good leader.
If there was any pressure from his father, it was to honor his father's standards. The bar was set very high by CJ. You had to be honorable, you had to be honest. Sometimes the owner's son's got to work twice as hard just to break even. So what his dad was doing was just tossing him in the pool and saying, "Get back to me when you come to the surface. Let me know how it's going." Of course, when it was finished, it's just gorgeous, this whole thing. It was a huge event in the city. All the people came and they had their own F&M band and all the employees were there, you know. And there's a great big spread on the newspaper and all the vendors who built the bank posted ads in the paper and congratulations on the new bank and so on.
Probably one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen.
3rd and Pine was the center of Long Beach on that day. Our main office is 4 stories tall. Our tower is 12 stories tall.
The building still has the F&M sign up at the top there, which you can see from far, far away.
You can still walk down to the corner of 3rd and Pine, and it's still a bank. It's still a family. And somebody will still walk up to you and say, "May I help you?" And that's invaluable.